to our program today. Our special moderator is Lisa Clemens-Stott. She is the Executive Director of Downtown Springfield, been in that position about 4 years, originally from Bloomington.
Ish.
Ish, okay.
That was my big city. I'm from Chenoa.
So, without further ado, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Lena Dunham had a television show called Girls. It was a very millennium show, and in the first episode, she famously told her television parents, she acted in it as well, she told them, "I believe I'm the voice of my generation." So today, this morning, you have 4 young professionals, very accomplished, who are going to be the voice of their generation today. And I'm very interested in the question and answer session after the panel to hear from some of the other millennials in the audience today, because it'll be interesting to see if you think that they represent your experience as well, or if there's some other things that you can add to the conversation. So we're going to introduce our panelists here right now. I'm going to go from my audience's left here. Justin Carter traded his East Coast lifestyle for the Midwest. Relocating from Rochester, New York, with stints in Erie and Pittsburgh, he joined WICS Television as the morning news anchor. He was born and raised in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and he caught the theater bug. There's a lot of that around here, too. And he channeled that into broadcasting when he majored in journalism and communication at the University of Pittsburgh. So welcome, Justin. Julio Berenzuela moved from Peru to Springfield at an early age. He completed elementary and high school here in Springfield. He joined the U.S. Navy, and he graduated from Southern Illinois. Then he went to California. He received an MS from Woodbury University in Burbank, and he's starting his PhD at Claremont Graduate University in California, so he splits his time right now between Springfield and Cali. Welcome, Julio.
Thank you very much.
David Lee was born and raised here in Springfield. You might recognize him as a 3-sport athlete at Springfield High. He graduated from Augustana College. He broke nearly every passing record in school history as their quarterback, too. He pursued a career in the medical device field, which he still does, and he spent 3 years in the Quad Cities before moving back to Springfield. Welcome, David. Elizabeth Scrafford is originally from northern Idaho. She currently works with the Sierra Club, managing community organizers in the Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio. She has lived in China, Alaska, and Chicago, and she graduated from DePaul University, double majoring in religious and cultural studies and peace, justice, and conflict resolution. Welcome, Elizabeth. Okay, let's start with jobs. I am going to ask each one of you this question, because I lied and I said that I wouldn't do that, but I am with this question. So, are you able to build the career you envisioned for yourself here in Springfield? Let's start with you, Elizabeth.
Yeah. I mean, I work for Sierra Club. I was living in Alaska and got a job with the Sierra Club that was originally based in Alton, and then decided to move after I'd been working for the Sierra Club for a year and a half. So I've moved into a new position in Sierra Club in March and am continuing to live in Springfield. So I don't work for, a local company. I work for a national organization that gives me the flexibility to live where I want. At this point, I could live anywhere in the Midwest I want.
Interesting. So do you see yourself living in Springfield when you're 50?
I don't know. I have a lot of friends here. I have my movie wife, Sunshine, who lives here, who's a very dear friend, and cost of living is low. And I have a pretty good community in Springfield at the moment, so I have no plans to leave.
Okay. David, can you build the career here that you want?
A little bit of the same situation. The company I work for, Stryker, is a Fortune 500 company, and pretty much, so I'm a medical device rep for them. Territory basically from Springfield to Joliet. So really I could live within that territory, anywhere, just kind of work from home. And so, I would say most reps in the area probably live in Springfield, Bloomington, or Peoria, just in general for kind of the central Illinois medical device reps. So yeah, if I ever wanted to go the corporate route and kind of move into like a marketing or management type role, I'd probably be called to our corporate headquarters in Michigan. But there's a lot of opportunity, obviously there is, a good population base in Central Illinois, and there's usually always kind of a territory carved out in that area. So I think that, yeah, I mean, if I wanted to, I could be here for a while in this field.
So do you think at this point in your career, do you see yourself being here when you're 50?
Kind of the same thing. I mean, I like where I'm at right now. Obviously, I'm from here. I didn't think I'd come back here originally, actually, but I've really enjoyed being back. My whole family's here, and cost of living's low, and I do have a good job opportunity. So I don't see myself leaving right now.
Okay.
50 is a long ways away.
Yeah. That's
All right, Julio, you kind of straddle 2 states already. I mean, you've been doing that for a while. Do you feel like you can build a career and make the impact that you want here in Springfield?
Thank you. It's a really good question. I think for me, I abdicated the traditional career track. I didn't look for a job when I got out of college. I wanted to create social change. I looked at different organizations that had a holistic interest in the community. So I was working with kids, with the elderly, with people with developmental disabilities, trying to promote a sense of cultural inclusion among all of them. But there wasn't one organization that wanted to only focus on all of them, they were interested in either or. So I started Salsa 29 as my fallback to create that business. Had I wanted to just open up a dance studio, I think Springfield would have been great because I have no competition when it comes to salsa dancing. But what I wanted to do was change the status quo. And so going back to California allows me to go to a place where those resources are available. And it was always my idea to go there and come back and bring a sense of innovative creativity to diversity and diversity active organizations. And for me, I think that I see myself here at 50 just like I see myself here now, because there's something to be said about having a sense of home. And California is a great place to be and a great place to have the energy. But there's a sense of comfort and security and encouragement that I get every time I come back. So I come back often. In fact, the shirt that I'm wearing, I bought. It is my hometown of Burbank, California, the Disney World. Yeah. But then with the Springfield town.
That's the perfect mashup.
Yes.
All right, so Justin, you kind of have, I mean, this audience understands kind of the life career you've chosen to a certain extent up to this point with how, if you want to keep rising in the ranks of television, that you get moved around a lot. So, I don't know, let's start with the question, let's change it a little bit. What are your first impressions of Springfield coming here as a millennial?
Well, it's so funny. I was recruited here by the vice president of my company back in 2018, last year. And the first thing he said to me was, do you want to go to Springfield? And I said, which one? I'm just trying to figure out where do you want me? Where do you want to put me on the map? And so my first impression when I got here, a coworker of mine said, I asked him a question. I said, well, what is Springfield known for here? And he said, Lincoln. And I said, okay. Cool. What else? And so my first impression, obviously, it had to grow on me. I was not sold, to be honest. I wasn't sold to come here. I came from Rochester, New York, and TV stations are ranked like 1 through 214 stations in the country, and Rochester was 78, and Springfield was 80. So I was doing a lateral move, and so I was not sold on that. The idea of being a TV journalist is you kind of go up in the ranks. So my next market was going to be 1 through 25. I was looking at St. Louis. I was looking at other, really, really populated, heavily populated cities with a lot of news, because that's what everybody does in TV news. So it had to grow on me until I noticed that theater was big here. That was something I kind of leached onto. And the charm of the city, it really, really grew on me over time. And I was able to get friends and gain friends very quickly. And happy as I've ever been. Yeah, in my career so far. And it has a lot to do with the job, too. I love doing the morning show. So, yeah.
Okay, so on the theater, so do you feel like most of your friends have come from theater, or like how did you grow and build that friend network?
Mm-hmm. Well, typically in television, we move so often that our friends become the people in television, because we're here, we sign 2 to 3 year contracts, and then we move on. So our best friends, we spend Thanksgiving, Christmas with them because we're not with our families, and we're with them every single day. Obviously, TV friends were first, and then, came theater. I was in my first show last October, a year ago, and instantly I became friends with them. It was magic. and I've done 4 shows in the last year. And so, yes, I'm taking a little bit of a break, but they are some of the best friends that I'll have for the rest of my life. So, yeah.
So I'm going to do a follow-up question with you, Elizabeth, because you're the other panelist that is not from Springfield, really. I mean, Julio was very young when he came. Do you know, one of the things that the Citizens Survey said was that it's tough to break into Springfield from a business sense. Have you found that to be true at all, or do you find your peers finding that to be true at all in your day-to-day?
I'm a little bit unusual in the fact that I like to talk to strangers. And my mom always says, I tell my mom I don't like people, and she says, you make friends in the grocery store, Elizabeth. And so, you know, there's lots of, Bill is in the back of the room, I think somewhere. I met Bill hanging out at places like the Citizens Club, and then we went and had coffee, and, you know, I bump into people, and then I bump into them again. And so I think people in Springfield are pretty warm. I think Midwest nice is real, and I like it. And so I think it's you know, it can be hard, it can take time, but I think Springfield has a good community sense, and that's one of the things that I like about it the most.
David, you have lived other places, and you know, I know you a lot through downtown type of committees. You've come back with a passion for the downtown district. What amenities do you, your wife, your friends, what amenities do you think are missing that we could grow here?
That's a great question. I think there's quite a few, but I think if you asked any millennial when they go to another place, you know, what really stood out to them, first of all, the first place they're going to go is the downtown district, and it's anything kind of involving an experience. That's really what stands out. So, I mean, we just went to Asheville, North Carolina, and, you know, we went to some coffee shops and some cool breweries. So I think we've done a great job with some things, but I think the missing piece is how do we put that all together, and how do we create some density in a place where other people can find each other? I think that's kind of been what's missing with our downtown and just kind of the city as a whole is what's the plan to get things together where people can find each other and have cool experiences and enjoy it, like the downtown areas where I think it should happen. But yeah.
Do you have any specific amenities that you've seen in other cities that you think, oh yeah, we need to transplant that? Or is it just more of a sense of place?
Sense of place for sure. I mean, I think you can create it with anything, but I mean, we've talked about this with some of the downtown committees. I think a wine bar would be really cool, kind of a higher end experience there, and definitely a rooftop. More outdoor community spaces. Obviously, Obed's does a great job. You can go there anytime. I think that's the one place in Springfield that you can go there anytime of the year, and find people that, you know, are like ourselves, and know that that's going to be there, and you can get that experience.
So, you know, you guys were the first generation to really grow up with the online culture, your whole experience. You know, Justin, when you're looking at, you know, what you purchase online versus the real life experience that you want, where's the distinction between that? You know, what are the things that are just easy to buy online, and what are the things you're still looking for IRL in real
Right.
life?
I like that. Well, for me, I think it's all about experience. Again, you hit it on it perfectly. I want to go to a restaurant that nobody else has gone before, and it's that experience that I can share on Instagram, I can share on Facebook. My friends like it, and it gets their attention, and it maybe gets them to come want to visit me eventually. So I think for me, when it comes, especially my experience with food and dining, I'm more, I kind of tailor my my choices on, you know, buying local versus online shopping. As far as clothing and stuff goes, I'm very crazy with clothes, so I shop on all different types of websites, not specifically geared towards local. But as far as my experience for eating and stuff, I think that can definitely be something that Springfield could work on. Just generally speaking, I look at restaurants that nobody else, again, that can go to. So for me, I think it's all about, you know, eating.
And it also sounds like it's a special experience. Like you're looking for something special and different and a little hidden almost that you and your friends can kind of share as an experience that not everybody knows about.
For example, the cookie dough factory downtown, not every city has that. I'm going to Tokyo in the next couple weeks or so. And I'm trying to book experiences for my family. My dad is not a millennial, obviously, and he is used to going on vacation and sitting at home and relaxing, enjoying. And me, on the other hand, I'm trying to book things, trying to book, how to make sushi, and we're going to do some go-kart outside, go-karting around the town, around the city. So I think, again, it has to do with what can Springfield do to be more attractive in that realm. With being obviously tailored to what we are known for, history, but also how can we make that fun and make a unique experience for the people who visit here?
Do you think you're going to get your dad to ride the go-kart?
I'm trying to get him on the plane first. He's terrified, and he's in the military, so I'm trying to get him on the 17-hour flight without using drugs.
Julio, you helped create an experience this summer, the Levitt Amp Springfield. You were very involved in creating that. That was an outdoor experience. That was a new experience. What were some of your takeaways from that as you're trying to build all of these different networks to kind of come together? Like, how did that help you do what you needed to do, and what did you kind of learn about Springfield through it?
The AMP concert for me symbolized a question that I've had for many years, which was, is Springfield a place where people can actually come out and enjoy Latin music? Because the myth had been that you're in Springfield, nobody's going to come out and salsa dance. No one's going to come out in numbers. So if you have a small Latin community, let's give it to them once a month, once every other month, so they don't get upset. But this is not the type of town that's going to cater to Latin dancing, because that's just the mentality that we have here. And I would always question, what kind of people are you talking about? Because we will definitely enjoy it, especially if you've worked a long week. And for me, it's always been interesting to hear about the lack of things that Springfield has, when from my chair, I see activities happening every weekend, every day. But when it comes to the Latin events, it's once a month, once a year. So the AMP concert represented what I saw as potential for a level of entertainment that I've always wanted for my city, that I take for granted when I go back to California. But it's always around population, and it's never around the type of activities that people could enjoy. So for me, I think at 38, I'm at the edge of the millennial group, but I'm also, having been in the Navy, beyond that, I think they kind of made me older quickly. So I'm always looking at what Springfield needs, not so much as to what I need. I don't think I spend a lot of time just enjoying Springfield and then saying, this is what I need to continue to enjoy myself. I spend a lot of time with committees and people much, much older and wiser than I am, trying to look at the holistic betterment of our communities. So I kind of sometimes envy the kind of joy that you get from Springfield, because I spend most weekends trying to work on an economic development focus on the quality of life of the Latino community and those who just enjoy Latin dancing.
So what else do you think Springfield needs when you look around? What are you trying to work on?
And what I would say that Springfield could better on is the cosmopolitan mindset, that we, in a way, because we're a conservative town, could say this is us and we're actually proud of it. Chicago, in a way, I look at people saying, oh, that's how they do it. But Chicago, in addition to the tall buildings, has activities throughout the week that are not just homogeneous to one group. And I think if we look at people like myself who are willing to work with the city or tourism to create that experience, not just for those who enjoy it, but for what I could say about the city, I think that kind of outside of the box investment could really pay off. I think for me, I represent at least a major part of the community that, especially when winter comes, this could be a very depressing town. And I'm not just saying I can't go out to a bar or to a club. There's just the music itself. My mom is an example of, when you grow up with this music, you need to, that's part of your quality of life. And to put it on one group's shoulders and say, well, you take care of your community, let us know how that goes. I think it's a little unfair when you look at the big picture of the investment that the city makes, both in city council and I would even say the Tourism Bureau, and to a degree, anybody who's got a big jurisdiction. They need to kind of extend that risk and say, hey, it might not just be to keep this group happy, it may be an overall quality of life for everyone in our community, and it may change the image that we have as a community that's growing and a community that's embracing this cultural, I would say even cosmopolitan perspective.
So I heard last night that Chatham is starting to build a thriving bar scene for 20-somethings. 20-somethings are starting to hang out in Chatham. And so, Elizabeth, I'm wondering, you know, we're talking about these connections and the density, and so people know where to go. Does it matter if, you know, the trends are starting to show that millennials are moving to the suburbs? Does it matter where that happens in Sangamon County, or is it very specific to place and we need to focus on certain places?
I mean, I think we need to take care of the city's core, which is lacking. So I think it's great if people are going to Chatham. I don't go to Chatham, but that's cool if other people want to, because I don't live there, and that's a ways away, right? I think that the core of the city is like the health of the city, and so like Springfield should focus on Springfield is what I would say. And I think you have a question later on about what we would do specifically to change, but like we need a city planner, and we need to really think. And I know their Downtown Springfield Inc. is thinking about this. I know I heard you talk when you spoke at my Rotary group about really focusing on things to be doing downtown, but. I think we got to start thinking about, you know, the core of Springfield a little bit more thoughtfully.
So why do you think that your generation is going to be the one to push us there? You know, why do you think that that's growing in importance for your generation?
Which part of the question?
All of it. You know, we need a city planner.
Yeah.
We need to focus. You know, we need to. Everything's swirling. There's so many issues going on worldwide, nationally. Everything's swirling. You know, is that truly becoming a consensus focal point?
Most cities have planners, and so you don't have to think we need a city planner. In Springfield, you can tell we don't have a city planner. So, like, I think Champaign has 6, right? That's the
have
word
a
I've heard.
staff.
We have 0. City Council had a chance a few years ago to vote for a grant writer, or to write in a grant writer in the city budget, and they took it out. I understand that the city budget was strapped at that time, but if you tether those positions together and you have a city planner working really thoughtfully with a grant writer, you can start thinking about what are we going to do in Springfield. And instead, we're making maybe some poor decisions. And I think that we have some really great people in the city. We have Val, who's working in the, I think, economic development role. I can't remember if Val is still on contract or not.
Nope,
but like
she was hired.
She was hired. I missed that. You know, she's doing some good work, but it can't just be Val. And Val isn't in the role of a planner. And so if we don't have someone in that role and then give them the authority to plan and listen to their recommendations, you're going to be able to tell it.
I think that maybe sometimes people are afraid of planning. How do you see it being a positive, David? Like, how do you see it being something that, you know, makes sense?
I don't think anything happens by accident. It has to be laid out on a long-term plan. I think that's what you're referencing here is, you know, because we don't have like a city administrator or a staff of city planners that are dedicated to that, I think things get short-sighted, and it can just be up to kind of the political doings of the 2 to 4 years or whatever we're thinking about.
The part-time council.
Yes, and a mayor that just kind of has all the control. So I think that's a huge factor in, you know, kind of the lack of planning and design in our city. One of the things I think about, like what I just mentioned with there not being any density or, you know, people not knowing where to go, Springfield's just a very pocketed place. Like now you're talking about Chatham as a pocket. I get it. I mean, I grew up on the west side of Springfield, and a lot of my friends live there. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, kind of what's happening in that pocket out there. It's kind of the neighborhood, you know, those bars and restaurants that are all right there on Cokie Mill and Isles type area. And what's happening out in Chatham, like that's fine. But what I think we need to be focusing on once again is the core of our city, like she said. It's just so vital to, you know, not only when visitors come in, but just our local, you know, you said that cosmopolitan kind of viewpoint of the city. I think and our city's been so divided historically, right? And the one place where we meet is in the core and in the center. It's where all our history is, and it should be where all of our kind of entertainment and nightlife is, and that just doesn't happen by accident. You mentioned, what would we do? I think that one of the biggest problems with downtown is the building code. And I mean, this is something that probably not a lot of millennials, I'm involved with DSI, so I've kind of been involved in this stuff. And I've had personal interest in, potentially being involved in a building project or something. And it is, most of our vacant buildings downtown, there's a lot of public policy you could put in place to either, kind of put a little pressure on some owners that are just leaving these vacant buildings, because that's a huge problem. But also, you look what you have to do to bring these buildings up to code and, put sprinklers in and all this stuff. It makes the project not be able to pencil at all. And obviously, the people who are potentially doing these projects know that, and that's why they've never been done. So I think a lot of us millennials, we want to, I know for me personally, like I have a lot of pride in my hometown here, and I would love to buy a building downtown and, kind of have a piece in it and put something, a cool experience, recruit a restaurant, that kind of thing. But it's almost impossible right now, and there's a lot of policy we could put in place to fix that, but I think it's, like I said, I think it's just a little short-sighted without having like a dedicated city administrator or planner that can kind of guide those things through administrations, through political strife, and have a long-term vision.
Julio, are there specific things that frustrate you about, maybe bureaucracy right now? Have you found ways, is it a millennial thing to figure out ways to work outside of the bureaucracy, or do you try to work inside the bureaucracy? How do you work to get things done?
I think this is where my Achilles heel has come into frustration is I've had a lot of great ideas over the past 10 years, both from the in and out of the bureaucracy perspective. I've hung out with the Citizens Club since 2009, listening to people come through and talk about things that are happening. And though I'm not a paid consultant to the city of Springfield, I've tried to come up with some solutions from my angle. And then I don't get taken seriously. I get disregarded as just a salsa dancer. And I think for me, I represent maybe a group of people who, from their own angle of art or their angle of innovation, they've tried to come to the table, but they didn't come with the right title, they didn't come with the right group behind them or the name of their organization. And like I said, I abdicated the traditional career track. I had been offered jobs. I'm a military veteran with ability to speak 4 languages, with a college degree, and very much interested in the betterment of my community. Having said that, since I was 18 years old, I've been wanting to do this. So from 18 to 28, when I was that young millennial, I had the energy to do a lot with Springfield. And I think to be encouraged to keep trying and keep working at it, I would say that Springfield does have the ability to bring money to things. I've seen it with my own eyes at City Council, how they can put $30,000 towards the golf tournament, but then turn around and say there's no money for X, Y, and Z. And for me, I've hung out with people in this very room when I've tried to put together just a small budget to make a greater impact and leverage what was happening already in the community. And don't want to call it short-sightedness, but I think just the apathy and the lack of interest in what they don't consider important is the disconnect. There are people here who, are very much trying to do things with a small budget, without a big name title behind them, but they don't get recognized as such. So what they do for people like myself, they force them to leave with the saying, you can't be a prophet in your own land. I find that discouraging because, I think we should be prophets in our own land. I think there's a lot of young people coming up that could do a lot of good for our communities, but the goal shouldn't be to just try to get a job. And I think, especially for the Latin community who come here, it's very much a combination of give and take. I would like to be able to have sustainable income to be here, but then I also have to make sure that I contribute. And my contribution has been very outside of the box. If I can make a group of people dance, it's not that I'm a dance instructor, it's that I'm trying to lower anxiety, I'm trying to promote cultural awareness. I'm trying to do things that as a city, we're still trying to grasp. We talk about race relations, we talk about the child obesity epidemic, we talk about a lack of interest in cultural awareness. All of these things, to me, I've studied this stuff, but I've never really wanted to go the traditional route of putting on a diversity training course when there are things that are generally happening in our community that if we were just to suspend disbelief and give credit, especially to the coordinators like myself, and allow us to partake in the big conversations, we really could show Peoria, St. Louis, and even Chicago to a degree that, hey, we may be a small town, but we do have big impact.
Justin, I can't really ask you about activism because it's not really appropriate in your role as a journalist. But I'm curious, Julio's talking about cultural awareness and everything. You've come into a city that has had some major votes on things that have really, the word race has become, an issue numerous times since you've been here regarding big policy decisions. Do you have a concept about how your generation looks at race and how it might be different from some of the older generations that are really struggling with it?
Yeah, the first thing I noticed about being in Springfield is mostly white. And it's the story of my life. I've always been in cultures and, or I should say cities that have been primarily white. Unlike Philadelphia, obviously, but that's where I'm from. But yeah, and what I noticed is that there is just such a divide. There's one section of town where I work, where the news station is, that right out the gate, as soon as I got off the airport, I was told, this is where the African Americans live, and Chatham is where the white people live, and Jerome is where there's a kind of a melting pot. So, even as a millennial coming here to Springfield, the first thing I said was, all right, where am I going to live? And how am I going to thrive? And where will I feel most comfortable? Going back to the city planning kind of thing, I decided to choose Chatham to live in. I felt like it was a community there.
Are you going to the downtown Chatham scene?
I'm not. No, I'm a homebody. But I will say that what attracted me to Chatham is there was apartments with pools. There were new construction. And that's what I don't see in Springfield. And I don't see it as an equal opportunity for everybody either.
So let's go around the panel and say what makes you most proud of Springfield and what makes you cringe the most. Elizabeth.
Can I go last?
Okay, who wants to go first? Does someone have an answer first?
I'll go.
Okay.
Do you want to go?
Go ahead.
No. Wait, one more time. What makes me
What's you're most proud of and what makes you cringe the most?
I am proud to live here because there's so much history here. I mean, I step into, I'm doing stories at the Capitol, the state Capitol building, and there's so much excitement, there's so much movement, and I have to step back and say, this is where Obama started. You know what I mean? So I really appreciate the love for the history and that we don't forget it and that we really, we try to get people here because of it. And I also think it's awesome to see people going to the Lincoln House, people going to the ALPLM. It's a tourist attraction. I think that's what makes Springfield so special, and it gets people here. What makes me cringe? I think downtown makes me cringe.
Really?
In my first year living here, there were 3 clubs that left, and I was wondering why. And I was just kind of looking at city council and what they were doing, and there were some issues with policing these areas, and I wondered if that was the reason why there was such a big crackdown on these clubs and these businesses that the millennials go to, that young people go to, and it kind of frustrated me because I'm like, okay, now where do I go? Do I go to Sky Lounge, which is in on the west side, which is separate from Icy is new, which is kind of in Jerome. So everything's so split up, and where I want to go now. So there is no central location where everybody can go and be happy and have fun. So that's what I think makes me cringe the most. So many empty spaces that have potential.
Okay, who wants to go next?
I'll go next. Well, in terms of empty spaces, I've seen that in Burbank as well. I always question how in Burbank, California, there could be an empty area.
That's high rents, probably.
The thing is that what I really like about Springfield, what I take to heart, what I brought to the City Council of Burbank, California, and told them was that I'm from the great city of Springfield, from where, Lincoln to me is something that I can go anywhere and talk about it with pride, and they associate all of that with the people from it. And I never ran away from Springfield. To me, I went out there to get resources to make our city much better. So I am very much proud of being from Springfield, Illinois. It's the only place that I really know. I came here to Springfield. People would ask me, why didn't your family move to Chicago? And I'm glad that I grew up in Springfield. It gave me a different perspective. Because I think in a big city, I would have been put in that part. This is where the Latinos live, in Humboldt Park or something like that. That's where they are. And I never had that sense of feeling. What makes me cringe in a way is, and this is where I step back, for the past 10 years minimum, I graduated from Carbondale in 2008. And my focus has been very, very all over the map. And it's a leverage, it's an opportunity I gave myself. I gave myself 10 years to try to understand what it is that I want to do. I blame it on a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, who said it would take me 10,000 hours to finally figure it out and become an expert at this. But for 10 years, I stayed in Springfield, watched people come and go, people who are leading the Chamber of Commerce, who every time I would hear them speak had the best interest in the city of Springfield. Next thing you know, they got a better job and they're gone. And I would watch this and say, how is it possible that these people are coming here, they're telling us in public that their mission is to make Springfield a much better place, and then they take a higher paying job somewhere else. And for me, since it was never about a job or job searching, I would always be left with this sense of, well, hopefully someone else will come through with a genuine interest to make my city, as they're saying, better. After 10 years, however, I feel that I've been at the table and I know what we're talking about, and I'm still not able to leverage the level of partnerships. I blame it 50-50 on myself, not being able to articulate it, not being able to make it a concise business plan that people can relate to and catch on to. But I also can tell you from experience, I've had many times where I just wanted to put my hands up and say, Springfield doesn't get me. Springfield doesn't get it. So I'll just leave. For me, a person who's very much interested in the betterment of my community, to have that sense of, I'll just leave, is very dangerous. When we're trying to encourage our young people to stay here, when we're trying to encourage young people to want to make a living here, as well as become city officials, et cetera, this sense of, they're not getting me, I'll just leave. If I've experienced it with my level of perseverance, with my level of interest, and then, I don't know, there may be many people who have fallen through the cracks and have left. And I find that unfortunate because all they needed was someone to say, well, I don't get it, but let's see what we can do with it. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for that. Springfield is not short on money. With all due respect, things cost the same sometimes because Starbucks is the same in LA than it is here. And I see a lot of people paying for it. It's the different mindset. In my world of Latin music, when I hear people in the year 2019 still talking as they were talking in 1997 by saying, yeah, well, if you give people too much salsa dancing here, then they won't go as often, is very, very small thinking. I mean, it's something that I would have thought it would change even with or without me, and it hasn't. So quality of life is very important for me. Allowing us to, when I brought the Zumba community out to the AMP concert, was a different way of looking at it. Maybe it's not the Latino community who enjoys Latin dancing. Maybe it's the Latin dancing community who enjoys Latin dancing. That wouldn't have happened had Lisa and Sheila from the downtown Springfield.
Arts Council.
From the Arts Council, sorry. Had they not invited me to be part of something bigger. And for me, this kind of relationship is what I've been needing and lacking. And I wish there were more of this for people like myself who are in the boundaries, outside of the margins, thinking of radical ideas.
Hold that thought for a second. I want to follow up on that in a second. David, most proud, most cringeworthy.
So I would say the special thing for Springfield about me, obviously I'm proud of like the history and being from here. It's a very special place in my heart. You only get one hometown. That's what I always say to people. So for me, it's a hometown thing. But so I'm gonna throw it back to, if any of you in the room knew Nathan Bishop, he was kind of Lisa's number 2. I always tell this story because it really impacted me. I was out in Colorado, that's where he lives now, in Denver. It'd be very easy for me, especially in my profession in medical device sales. There's just more jobs in bigger cities, and it can potentially be more lucrative. So I can move anywhere at any time, and I think all of us could. But I was out there in Denver and met up with Nathan, and he said, you could move to any big city like Denver, let's say, and all the amenities are already there. You have everything you want, and you could be that consumer. And that's kind of how I feel, and that's what a lot of millennials are doing right now. I mean, we're moving to places that already have it and are providing the experiences for us. But what I'm proud of what I'm trying to do here is I want to be somebody who actually makes an impact. And I think that you can do that in Springfield and kind of these smaller communities. So what he said is, you can be a consumer, or you can, work your butt off and try to move Springfield forward, in relative terms, an inch. What means more to you? And that's a question I think people should be asking themselves. For me, it's that inch. That is what makes me proud of Springfield, because there's a lot of people that have that same mindset, like Lisa, like everybody up here, that want to change things, and I think we can. Mm-hmm. So that's what's huge for me, and that's why I do what I do with the involvement. What makes me cringe is people who don't think like that. But no, it's kind of Springfield to me. What makes me cringe is kind of the small town mentality. Everybody always says the small town, small town, small town. I think Springfield's like the ultimate comfort zone place. Just the status quo. Hey, let's not shake things up too bit. Let's not get too crazy. Let's talk about this one more time before we pass something. It's a very non-progressive community in a lot of ways. But I think it's kind of that overall mindset of, hey, why would we change what we have going? It's been the same since 1980, and it's literally been the same. So I would just challenge people to maybe think a little different.
Okay. All right, now it's your turn.
Okay, I'm ready.
You ready?
Yeah. So I think there is a great community of change makers in Springfield. I'm a part of the Springfield Immigrant Advocacy Network and a couple other groups where I see people who have things that they really care about coming together and trying their best to move them forward. So I think that's something I'm proud to be a part of, and I'm proud to see happening in pockets all across the city where you have really invested residents who are coming together asking the question, how do we make our community better? And I think that is something you don't see everywhere, that there are so many people that care so much, and that's something to be proud of. What definitely makes me cringe is things change very slowly. And I think the point that David just made, that some people don't want things to change, is very true.
Do you want to do it within the existing frameworks, or do you want to bust up the frameworks and start fresh? Are you trying to make this change? And you kind of talked a little bit, Julio, about you've tried to go into what have been the sources of power, and you've tried to convince them, and that's a source of frustration for you. I mean, you said, they're not getting me, I'll just leave. Is there a way that you all look at it that you're thinking, okay, we need to start busting this up now?
Wow.
Can I grab this one?
Yeah.
So I think there's a ton of things happening that are kind of bubbling up under the surface. And we are our own worst advocates in this town. I'm telling you, I hate it. This should be my cringeworthy
That's
thing.
your other
When somebody says, oh, why did you move to Springfield? That's our own residents who have been here are our own worst advocates. Honestly, I've heard so many people my age that they're discouraged. They come here, they like it, they're kind of like what they see, and then the people in this community are bringing them down on why'd you come here? It's a dying town, whatever. So I think there's a lot of good things that are happening. If people get involved, you're gonna automatically see it. My focus, like I've said, is in downtown, so I'm gonna kind of talk about that. But Innovate Springfield and Sangamon CEO, I see Nabi sitting over here. All the things that are happening, people don't really realize it, and there's so much momentum that's happening underneath the surface that I think eventually is going to break out, but we're kind of getting in our own way.
Can I piggyback
Yeah.
on that? So I think, what's great about the city of Springfield is contacting your city representative is really easy. There's a couple in the room today. I saw Alderman Donnellan come in. I saw Alderman McMinimans here. I don't know who else is here. Alderwoman Kristen DeCenso is here a lot. I live in Ward 6, so I'm in Kristen's district. She's really easy to get a hold of. And, I'm one of those people that when there's a vote coming up that I care about, I'll ping her and say, hey, this is how I feel. And I actually met Kristen when she was running for alderwoman in this room years ago when I asked a question and she tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, let's talk. And so I think that there is an opportunity to go to the people who represent us on city council and go talk to Mayor Lingfelder and attend events and get to know them. And if you care about an issue, then you should be showing up to city council. I don't think that that should be the only option or the only venue for change, but we do have an opportunity, and I think that people need to get used to using their voices a little bit more. And showing up and asking questions and writing emails and making phone calls, because that stuff does make a difference. So I think a lot of people know what the problem is, and maybe some people are tired of asking for the same things. A lot of people like ICON have been saying for years, we need a city planner, we need a city planner, we need a city planner, and it feels like that's been falling on deaf ears. So that is hard, and I think people, when you keep banging on the door and no one's answering, you kind of want to give up. But I think I would urge folks not to give up, because there are a lot of people who care, and there are a lot of great people who should be running for office.
And just to answer your question, I don't think we have to completely blow Springfield up and start fresh. I think we can work within the framework that we have. We have a really solid foundation. People love it here. But I think back, I went to school in Pittsburgh, and their claim to fame was the coal mining industry. And when that tanked, the city tanked. And so I think we have to start realizing we have to look into the future and see what will Springfield's new claim to fame be. Pittsburgh is now thriving because they invested in technology, they invested in medicine, they invested in retail. Dick's Sporting Goods is located there, the corporate office, American Eagle. So I think that we have to kind of start thinking outside the box and thinking about what we can do in the future to make this an attractive city.
Well, I think that's a wonderful place to end the formal panel discussion, and now we're going to open it up to you in the audience. Do you have questions for these wonderful panelists? Bob's.
Yeah, questions back here?
Thank you all. And thank you, Lisa. I just want to say that you are one of the hubs of Springfield. You are one of the connecting people that makes this all work. And to that end, there are a ton of people in here who are really involved. What we are not good at is communicating to each other what resources and needs we have. I know that the few places that I have fingers in, I try and connect those people. What do you think we can do to better connect one another in the absence of something like a city planner who might be able to do that for us?
Question?
I mean, you have to have the authority to plan. So I think that's where you have a pretty big problem. If you don't have someone in the job with the skill set and the authority to do it, like, I think we all have ideas of what city planning should be. I'm not a trained city planner. I wouldn't recommend hiring me for that role, or having, a volunteer group do planning. I think you need someone who has that education and that training and that experience to come and do the thing. So there are some things that I think community folks can step up and do, and speak up and connect ourselves, but we can't be city planners if we don't have the planning background, I would say. We could try, but we might really fail.
Here, John.
We've heard a lot about frustrations and wants. What would each of you rank as your top one or two problems in getting things done? What are the hurdles that stop you or make you pause and you can't get over them? Or
I think people being afraid of change is probably one of the biggest problems. I think we've touched on it a couple times, but I go to council meeting, not necessarily in my role here, but just in the past in Rochester, New York, and in Erie, Pennsylvania, where I started my career, and the common denominator is being afraid of failing and I don't think we should be afraid to fail because everybody fails in their pursuit to success. So I think that is probably the biggest thing for me that I've noticed, and it holds a lot of communities back, and Springfield is not excluded from that.
I'll chime in on that. For me, I try to keep a positive attitude when it comes to salsa as my solution to my frustration. But I can tell you the following thing. Short of wanting to run for office, which has always been an option that was offered to me if I wanted to make real change, they said, was realizing that people in position of power, people in position of directorships with funding and with leverage, the priority is different. What they consider important is much different than what people down here consider important. And again, I only speak from my experience with quality of life as it relates to the Latin dance community. When I try to explain to them how important it is that, we come around this idea that there should be more Latin music venues, and it's not just a business that I'm looking to start, that it's actually an intervention. Their priority perspective was different. Since they don't dance Latin music, since they could go a whole year without it, then good luck to you. And for me, the frustration comes in, we rather pay consultants a lot of money to come into our town and tell us what we could do and what we should do. When you have people in your town that are telling you, and they're not charging you, maybe that's a problem that I was having. It was coming in for free. And they were just entertaining me, and they weren't taking me seriously. When I see Springfield as a whole, as you were saying, taking for granted what we have. We have Knights Action Park in our city, yet as a city, I think a few travels ago, they were talking about building a sports complex with a lot of amenities that I found very similar to Knights Action Park. And I find that if we were just to work with Knights Action Park and turn that into an amazing place that people can go and be recreationally active and not have to go to Six Flags, things like that I think are overlooked because we take for granted what we have. Coming from California back and forth, I very much am aware of what we have. That's what keeps bringing me back. Sometimes what maybe we should do is take a trip to California or take a trip anywhere and then come back, right? And it's
Get
not
a corporate sponsor for that?
I
get
know,
a
I was
corporate.
gonna say.
I was telling a young man in the audience, it's only a couple $100s away. Sometimes you can get a trip for $100. So in terms of money, it's that fear of actually leaving and being out there on your own, which I've done. And I didn't say I did it. I left Springfield. In fact, I said, I'm glad I did this. What are they doing here that we could do back in Springfield? And I come back and I share that information with all of you.
I was wondering, I know that the people you're speaking to here in the room are mostly people who are already active or trying to be active. What do you think can be done to bring out younger people, if you will, your age or younger, and get them involved in the things that we're talking about today? What's the best way to reach out to those folks?
I think people our age, they want a cause to follow, and it's really hard right now when there's no vision being cast, at least in my opinion, for people to follow. So I think that, it's a great question. I mean, I'm not in the position of power to kind of do something about that, but I think what we need is people, just like something to follow it. I don't want to say a leader to follow because it's not about one person, but a vision or a purpose to follow. I think millennials get behind that. Lisa gave us a question before about authenticity. I think millennials follow authenticity and follow, kind of something that grabs their heartstrings. And so that's a great question, though. I mean, I think it's essential that people our age get more involved, but how do you do it? I don't know. Do you guys? It's something you got to grab at the heart with us.
Well,
I mean,
when I was in college in Carbondale, and we had a class called Business 101, and what they taught us in the first week was, when it comes to career, you either become what you do, or you do what you are. And the focus was to try to figure out what you're naturally interested in wanting to do in life as a natural born quality, and then try to create a career around that. And I think there are a lot of young people here, they're just, especially, again, I want to represent talk to population, which is the Latin community. They have a lot to provide because they're not just bilingual, they're bicultural. And we have an opportunity to really encourage a young population here that may or may not be scared of the immigration reform movement, et cetera. But what they can contribute to our community is a sense of, perspective that can really embrace the cosmopolitanism of our city. Having said that, what would bring young people out, I think, is a sense, as you were saying, a sense of mission, a sense of accomplishing a personal goal. And that is very personal to a lot of people. And creating especially through the Chamber of Commerce or a Small Business Administration, letting them know that what their passions are can very much become either a career track, or there are jobs that can very much connect with that. And not just have a goal of finishing high school or graduating college and looking for a job, but rather there's a job waiting for them, or a job waiting for them to create. And that, as you were saying earlier, can happen much easier in Springfield than in LA. In LA, you very much trying to get a meeting with Eric Garcetti, the mayor of LA, it's not going to happen. Here in Springfield, it's a very much possibility. So you have more access to resources here, but it has to be both ways. That we have to have that open invitation and vice versa.
Lisa, thank our panel for being with us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, panel. The voice of God.
That's exactly it.
I was just enjoying myself up here. I'd like to thank Julio Berenzuela, Justin Carter, David Lee, and Elizabeth Scrafford. I think we've all learned a lot. Thank you so much for your insights. I wrote down a lot of great points that I think all of us should consider as we move our city forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us.